December 1944. Europe is plunged into one of the coldest winters of the century. Snow covers the roads. The sky is low. Allied planes are grounded. For many American soldiers, the war seems almost won. Paris has been liberated. Allied armies are advancing towards Germany. The enemy is retreating. But this feeling of victory is a dangerous illusion. At dawn on December 16, 1944, the German army launched a massive and completely unexpected offensive in the Ardennes. It was a desperate gamble by Hitler, but also one of the most audacious attacks of the entire war. More than 200,000 German soldiers, supported by tanks and artillery, struck a sector the Allies believed was quiet, defended by tired and inexperienced units. Within hours, the Allied lines broke. Roads were overrun by columns of refugees, isolated soldiers, destroyed vehicles. Confusion was total. The Germans advanced rapidly, creating a huge bulge in the Allied front, what history would later call the Battle of the Ardennes or the Battle of the Bulge. At the heart of this chaos was a small Belgian town with a now legendary name, Bastogne. There, about 10,000 men of the 101st U.S. Airborne Division found themselves surrounded. They lacked ammunition, food, and medicine. The cold was so intense that some soldiers froze to death in their trenches. The Germans demanded their surrender. The American response became mythical. Nuts. Go to hell. But courage alone would not be enough. Hundreds of miles away, the supreme commander of Allied forces in Europe, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, faced one of the gravest decisions of the entire war. If he failed to break the encirclement of Bastogne quickly, thousands of men would be lost, and the German offensive could completely disorganize the Allied front. Eisenhower knew time was against him. Every passing hour strengthened German positions. Roads were impassable. The weather prevented any air superiority. Reserves were limited. Yet, he had to act fast, very fast. It was in this atmosphere of extreme tension, of maps covered with red arrows and tired gazes, that Eisenhower convened a crisis meeting in Verdun on December 19, 1944. Around the table were the greatest Allied generals. Each knew that what would be decided here could change the course of the war. And it was there, in that cold room, that a man would utter a phrase that would astound everyone. A man known for his genius, but also for his impossible character. His name, George S. Patton. On December 19, 1944, Verdun was no longer the glorious symbol of the First World War. It was a cold, dark city, overwhelmed by urgency. In an austere military building, a decisive meeting was about to begin. Around the table, the highest Allied commanders in Europe. Maps were spread out, covered with red arrows dangerously pushing westward. Bastogne was encircled. Communications were fragile. Time was running out. General Dwight D. Eisenhower silently observed the situation. He knew this German offensive was more than an attack. It was an attempt to break the Allied coalition, to sow doubt, to gain time. Then he asked the question everyone dreaded. How long will it take you to counterattack and relieve Bastogne? A heavy silence fell. The answers came, cautious, realistic, and worrying. Some spoke of several days, others of a week. Roads were frozen. Units were poorly positioned. Men were exhausted. No one wanted to promise the impossible. Then Eisenhower turned to a man sitting slightly apart. George S. Patton. Patton was not a general like the others. He was brilliant, aggressive, unpredictable. His speeches were violent, his ego immense, his language often shocking. Eisenhower knew his flaws. He had even considered removing him several times. But he also knew his genius. And you, Patton? Patton did not consult his notes. He did not ask for a delay. He did not look for excuses. He answered almost immediately. I can attack with 3 divisions in 72 hours. The room froze. 72 hours. 3 divisions. In the middle of winter. Through snow-blocked roads. Facing a full-strength German army. Some generals thought they had misheard. Others exchanged incredulous glances. Eisenhower himself remained silent for a few seconds. He knew the numbers. He knew what such a maneuver represented. It was, in theory, impossible. When exactly? Asked Eisenhower. December 22nd, replied Patton. It was not an estimate. It was a certainty. Eisenhower stared at Patton for a long time. He knew this promise could save Bastogne, or cause an even greater disaster. He also knew that Patton had surprised everyone before. But what no man around that table yet knew was that Patton was not speaking conditionally. He was not improvising. For weeks, Patton had feared a German offensive in the Ardennes. Unlike many, he never believed the enemy was out of breath. In secret, he had prepared contingency plans, alternative routes, pre-written orders. When Patton made this promise, he wasn't taking a gamble. He was simply revealing what he had already set in motion. Eisenhower made a risky decision. He accepted. The meeting ended. The generals left the room, aware they had witnessed something exceptional. A promise had been made. An invisible clock had just begun its countdown. And now, everything rested on one man, and on his ability to turn the impossible into reality. For the other generals present in Verdun, Patton's promise seemed almost arrogant. To attack in 72 hours, in the middle of winter on snow-blocked roads, against an enemy moving at full speed, it seemed impossible. But what no one around the table yet knew was that Patton never spoke at random. For several weeks, General George S. Patton had been carefully observing the warning signs of a German offensive. Reconnaissance reports, unusual enemy troop movements, suspicious radio silence. Everything indicated that something was brewing in the Ardennes. Unlike many others, Patton did not believe that Germany was already defeated. So he had prepared. Even before the Verdun meeting, Patton had ordered his staff to work on secret emergency plans. His army, the U.S. Third Army, was then advancing eastward towards Germany. Officially, his mission was clear. Unofficially, Patton had asked his officers one very specific thing: to be able to pivot the entire army north at any time. Alternative routes had been identified, supply points located, pre-written orders ready to be transmitted in minutes. Even the logistics, fuel, ammunition, food had been thought through for a sudden change of direction. This level of anticipation was extremely rare. Patton knew that, in modern warfare, speed of decision could be worth more than the number of men. And above all, he knew that Eisenhower would need a general capable of doing what no one else would dare attempt. When Patton left the Verdun meeting, he did not go back to reflect. He went back to act. Immediately after the conference, his orders were transmitted. Thousands of vehicles began to reposition. Divisions received clear, concise, almost brutal instructions. No debates. No hesitation. Every officer knew exactly what he had to do. Patton imposed a relentless pace. He demanded that his soldiers be ready to march day and night. He knew the weather would be terrible, that fatigue would be extreme, but he deeply believed in one thing: an army that moves faster than the enemy disorganizes them. While the Germans still thought they had neutralized any threat from the south, Patton was already preparing the blow that would change everything. His troops, still invisible in the snowstorm, were becoming a force in motion. It was not improvisation. It was the result of an obsession with preparation. And very soon, the world would witness one of the greatest logistical feats of the entire Second World War: pivoting an entire army 90 degrees in the middle of winter under enemy fire.